What brought me to the church?
The kids program is like really good. The Sunday school, I understand it, and so it's like a lot of fun.
We were trying to find a church. We'd gone to a number of churches in the area, and then my uncle had suggested that we come to the Congregational church. When we arrived, we ran into the pastor there at the time, and he was probably about my age at the time, would have been in his 30s, and he had a family. And you could just feel in the church the feeling of being part of a community, a family-oriented church, where they really were striving for the kids. They had a strong belief in the kids. There was a strong belief in faith in the church.
I was 16 years old, and we were living in Holliston. I grew up in Holliston. And the minister at that time was Dr. Ingram, who was a woman, and one of her strengths was pastoral care, pastoral counseling. And she was very, very good to us. But I do remember feeling like I needed something, and I know my mom felt that she needed something. And we weren't here very long before we decided to join the church. My biggest memory of the church. I tried not to, but I kept coming back to September 11th because I was on deacons when that happened, and I had just lost my grandfather. He died September 5th, 2001. And Herb and Karen had come to his funeral 3 days before September 11th. So, I mean, that really hit close to home. You know, it's like, how could this have happened? I just saw him. You know what I mean? And then to see the church come together the way that it did to support Karen and her family, I mean, that's something that's out of the ordinary.
What are those moments that say, this is the right place?
Experiencing the last 5 years has told me this is the right place. They went through an awful lot, this church, in the last 5 years. We were very, very fortunate to have a solid foundation. And by that I mean with our elder members of the congregation. Their faith, their strength managed to continue to keep some of us younger ones and groups of people together so that we could get through. With any growth in any family, you have to have some struggles. And that struggling only brings you closer.
Was the church community here for me? In 1991, my family was so fractured, and sometimes when you're that hurt, you want to remove yourself from the situation. And I was living in the Oaks house at the time. Rob Gormley was our pastor then, and he and his family pretty much took me under their wing. They could not have been more caring or supportive. Ed and Jane Dillon were unbelievable. They are to this day are two of my dearest friends, because they saw that I was hurting, that I just didn't know what to do with myself. And they stepped up.
Where have you seen, or where have you personally experienced ministering being effective in people's lives here?
Picture this. You're at Children's Hospital, Boston. You've been sitting there for 8 hours. Your daughter has just had a tumor removed from her brain. You're sitting there and you're struggling. You're trying to understand everything that's going on. You're asking multitudes of questions, and you're really trying to figure it out. And lo and behold, in walks the interim pastor for your church. You've never met this guy. It's the first time he's ever been there, that you even know he's there. And he walks in. He came all the way from Milford to Children's Hospital. The relief, the feeling, the energy that was transmitted from just the small, simple conversation and his presence, it was like you're in the dark and you're in a fog, and the light was lifted.
Ministry in this church, pastoral care, isn't just hired out. It comes up from the heart. How do you put a price tag on that? If you were to have one wish or vision for this church, one thing that you'd like to leave with it, what would that be?
If it's one wish, if I have to confine it to one wish, would be that we didn't have to worry about and focus on money. And I don't know how you do that, but I think it's incredibly positive and hopeful that the pledges are coming in at 100%. When that happens, it means that we don't have to focus on that. We can focus on outreach and faith and education.
My choice was stability. The church has to start growing, and that growth doesn't start with more money. It starts with a commitment by the congregation, making a commitment first and foremost in their faith. I said earlier that I had a great deal of admiration for this church because of the last 5 years and the fact that they've had 3 interim pastors before they've achieved what we have now, which I think is absolutely wonderful. The church itself has to take that next step. With faith comes everything else. And guess what? When you put faith, you put the message together, you put the learning together, and you put the outreach together, what's the next thing that comes with that? The finances.